very dangerous. And so the scary thing about the Rosenberg trial is, I mean, if you just look at these people, I mean, they look like my grandparents. If these people can pass atomic bomb secrets, who knows what they're doing with their spare time? How many people look like this in your own town, at your own church, at your own place of business? I mean, you never know. Ethel and Maud over there, you know what I'm saying? They can be very dangerous. You think they're selling cookies at bake sales, but no. That's just a cover for what they're really doing. Oh yeah. I mean, look at some of you in here. I guarantee it, you guys are probably doing some horrible things, right? Some of you are sinning as we speak, thinking of horrible things. I'm just kidding. No, but it's like people start to look at other people differently as a result of these high-profile cases. Let me give you another one. This guy named Alger Hiss was basically a guy that worked in the State Department in the highest level of the government, really, accused of having communist ideas and working with communists in the 1930s. His trial, he actually had two trials. One of them was a mistrial. He was actually accused of basically perjury, and he was actually jailed for 4 years. So when you got the Rosenbergs and you've got Alger Hiss, normal people, it makes you feel like your government isn't safe, you know? And it contributes to the hysteria, and that's the big idea here. And what lengths will people go to? Lengths will the government go to stop that hysteria? Right? Remember 9/11 2 years ago, 2001? If you guys were alive for that, you guys are so young. What would the U.S. government do in order to make sure everybody's safe, to make sure everybody's secure? Right? What lengths were they willing to go? Does it mean more airport security? Right? Does it mean? I mean, I was at an airport like a few years ago. Actually, my wife and I went to New York. Great time. I literally saw a grandma, I'm pretty sure she was like 92. You know, and she had a walker, you know, the kind of walker with tennis balls on it. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't screech the floor. I saw a guy actually take her to the side, security officer, and give her the wand, patted her down, and made sure she wasn't carrying anything of explosive value on her person. I'm like, this is a blue-haired grandma, you know what I mean? Like someone that's in a rest home. U.S. government doesn't play around, you know, when it comes to safety. We didn't do the same things here. We didn't have the technology to do it, but yeah. What lengths will the United States go to make everybody safe? Well, this is what you call the Red Scare. Now remember, this isn't the first Red Scare in U.S. history. The first one is in the 20s, isn't it? This is the second Red Scare in the 1950s, and it's spearheaded by a guy by the name of Joseph McCarthy. He's a Republican from Wisconsin, and he is the man seated in the middle of this picture that has these papers. And very famously in 1950, he actually had a press conference, and he brazenly declared that I have a list of 205 communists working in the highest level of government. 205 of them. They're all here. I have a list. Yes. President Truman heard this. He goes, seriously? And what proof do you have, Mr. McCarthy, that these people are communists? Well, they're communists. They're communists. See? I mean, look at them, right? And so Joseph McCarthy went on kind of a witch hunt, playing on the fears of Americans, not like a real witch hunt, you know, because that would involve burning people and stuff. They didn't really do that. This is different. This is called ruining people's careers. It's going after anybody and everybody who's suspected communists in the State Department, in the whatever department of government. Even the House of Representatives gets in on this. And with a very famous committee called the House Committee on Un-American Activities, or HUAC, which doesn't make a lot of sense acronymically. This group lasted until 1975 and was investigated to basically create or to investigate treachery and subversive organizations. Which begs the question, what exactly is un-American anyway? Right? Does un-American mean, in this context, I guess it means communism. Ladies and gentlemen, the communist Red Scare wasn't much of a scare. Let me explain. This isn't in your PowerPoint, but here's some numbers for you. 40,000. Most historians believe that the communist threat was very much exaggerated in the 1950s. At any one time in America, in the 50s, you had about 40,000 people that were communists. Let's do the math. 40,000 people. America is about 200 million people in the 1950s. Let's do the math. 40,000, 200 million. Is it possible that those 40,000 people are really that much of a threat that we have to create government agencies to try to stop them? And we're not talking about people that are necessarily treacherous. They just happen to be communists. I mean, it's a free country, right? I mean, they can believe that. The Communist Party even exists today. So, how much of the Cold War was at home was a real threat, or was it manufactured by the government to stir up fear and anxiousness so that certain politicians, and I go back to the slide, so certain politicians, Joseph McCarthy, can get elected, right? So that they can show they're tough on those communists. The Red Scare sure affects Hollywood, though. Like they showed in the video, you saw that you have the very famous Hollywood 10. Now let me ask you guys, in the Cold War, why would Hollywood be a tremendously big target for the government? What is it about Hollywood that makes it such a problem?
Has all the actors and all the studios producing mass propaganda.
Okay, so they can produce mass propaganda through their shows. Is that what you're gonna say?
Yeah, no, because they can kind of just practically people on
It's like subversive messaging, subliminal messaging. It's like back when I was a kid, back in the 1980s, back when heavy metal was really, cool. And there was all these cool bands like Ozzy Osbourne and Wasp. You never heard of Wasp? Judas Priest. They talked about the fact that you could take a heavy metal album, such as a Judas Priest album, and take the record, these black things called records, okay? You put them on a turntable, you play them backwards, and they have satanic messages. Kill your mother. Stomach pump your cat. Stuff like that. Just making you do weird stuff. They accused the band AC/DC of death, of this one girl died, and what they found in the killer's car was an audio cassette of one of their songs called Night Prowler. So they blamed it on AC/DC, they sued them. It's like back in the 1950s, how when rock and roll came out, and suddenly people started to blame Elvis Presley when he gyrated his hips, for starting teenage sexual activity. It's him who's responsible. It's Hollywood that's responsible for spreading communist lies. It's Hollywood's Problem today that we're spreading alternative lifestyles that are natural and normal, that show Modern Family shows a gay couple. If our kids watch that, they're going to become gay. Oh no, right? It's all this fear, right? It's just like, wow, blown out of proportion. Yes, sir.
It actually ruined a lot of their careers too.
Oh, absolutely.
I know like a lot of writers and directors would have to use different names.
Yep.
And one from the Academy Award for his writing wasn't even able to attend the ceremony.
Because he was blacklisted. And that's what he was saying is it ruined a lot of people's careers because they were blacklisted for being suspected communists. And that's the kind of climate it is, and it was back in the day. Hollywood's famous anti-communist, as you saw in the video, Ronald Reagan, future president. This guy was trying to make a name for himself. He wasn't even like a really good actor. He was a B-movie actor. A movies are the ones that are like the good movies. The B movies are and also, so Ronald Reagan was that guy. Maybe that's why he got involved in politics. Anywho, Walt Disney was very much an anti-communist as well. Now, maybe for homework, you guys can go watch Snow White and tell me what you think. No, I don't know. But there's certainly, in Hollywood, the pressure is on from the government to change the way that Hollywood produces films, as well as other things. All throughout the government, there's all these things like this example called the Federal Loyalty Program. The Republicans felt Truman was getting a little too soft on communism, and so the Truman administration started to go after anybody and everybody to review the loyalty of everybody in the federal government, okay? And this is pretty scary if you work for the government. 3 years later, Truman actually approved agencies to fire people that they believed to have no more than bad security risks. So like, if you perhaps said something questionable, you could be fired, okay? Lots of people's careers were ruined. By 1951, here's the numbers and statistics. About 212 people were actually fired and discharged without pay, and over 2,000 employees resigned under pressure. So it's almost like a purge was going on, and whether it's Hollywood or the government, it just seems like that kind of time period where anything you say literally can be used against you. Okay? You might be a communist, but you need to watch it, especially if you're hanging around the wrong people that hear the wrong thing. And again, the threat of communism, frankly, to the United States was probably pretty low. We're looking at 40,000 communists not worldwide, but just in the United States, and that's far less than the amount of Democrats and Republicans that were back then. So the question is to you guys, it's something to think about as we continue this. How much of this is manufactured by the government? You know what I mean? How much of it is manufactured by the government? How much of it's real? How much of it's a real threat? Do people think it's a threat because the government says it's a threat? What if the government didn't go to these great lengths and people think it's a big deal? I don't know. It could be. But how much of a role does the government play? Okay. The fear of communism also was evidenced in something called this. It's called the McCarran Act. And this is one of the things that the US government did that was in the video there. In 1950, all communist associations were to register with the Attorney General and make public all their records. In other words, to have it widely accessible